In our previous video, we imported a landscape from Gaea into Unreal. To see our entire level, we had to open up the level settings and under World Partition Setup, turn Enabled Streaming to false. This forced our entire landscape to load. You don't really want to ship a game this way. Let's re-enable streaming. Click Enabled Streaming to True. Turning it back on is going to cause our streaming proxies to unload. To turn them back on, highlight them all in the outliner, right-click, and select Force Load. Now if we hit play, our game will only show the landscape in our immediate surrounding. So why is this happening? Unreal is using a system called World Partition to divide our large map. World Partition is an automatic, distance-based level streaming system. The system treats your world as a single persistent level, separated into grid cells. Cells load and unload based on their distance from your character. World Partition is defined in your world settings in the World Partition Setup section. There are two runtime hash classes. World Partition Runtime Hash Set and World Partition Runtime Spatial Hash. Let's use the spatial hash. Both will work, but I think spatial hash is a bit simpler. Then let's press Preview Grids to see the world partitioning. The circle around us shows our loading range. The squares that overlap with our loading range are highlighted. Let's set the distance to 14,000. This value could change based on how far you want to load things, but this is a good distance for me. So how are we going to see the landscape in the distance that is outside our loading range? That's where we start using HLODs, or Hierarchical Level of Detail System. It is used to combine static mesh actors outside our loaded region into a single proxy mesh. HLODs are built on top of LODs. LODs is a system of swapping out further away static meshes with simpler meshes, so the level of detail drops the farther away. We can configure our LOD settings on our landscape and then build HLODs off of those settings. We will look at that in a bit. For now, let's go to Build tab, Build HLODs. This will probably take several minutes to build, so let's fast forward to when it's done. You will see immediately in the viewport that the landscape looks low resolution. That is because you are actually looking at the HLOD mesh you generated. It is visible by default. If you go to your outliner, hit the I button next to the HLOD folders. When you hide them, we'll see our landscape underneath. If your landscape isn't showing, go to the outliner, select all your landscape proxies, and force load them. Now if we play, we can see the HLODs further away, but they look really bad. On top of that, we have some really nasty tearing at the seams of our HLODs. So how do we improve our HLODs? Well, I found two things to do. First, let's go to the Landscape Actor, Details panel, and then HLOD section. Here, let's set the HLOD mesh source load policy from lowest detail LOD to automatic LOD. Then we are going to change our landscape's LOD settings and rebuild our HLODs. To see LOD settings, go to the top of your viewport, Visualizers, then LOD. You should see the ground with bands of color radiating out from your location. Each color is an LOD section. Closer sections have higher detail. So white is LOD 0, red LOD 1, green LOD 2, and so on. Now what's interesting is if we hit play, you will notice that the world partition ends in an LOD1 section that shares an edge with an HLOD built using the lowest resolution option. We want the loaded LOD zone to have the same level of detail as the HLOD texture adjacent to it. A really easy way to ensure this is to make sure the world partition loading distance is well within the LOD 0 region. Go to Landscape in our outliner, then LOD Distribution section, and there are three main values: LOD 0 screen size, LOD 0, and other LODs. LOD 0 screen size sets how big the LOD 0 section is in relation to other LOD sections. LOD 0 sets how big the LOD 0 section is. Other LODs sets how much the other LOD sections are spread out beyond LOD 0. We don't have to go too crazy. Moving the LOD 0 screen size to 0.2 makes LOD 0 bigger and covers up the area of our radius. Let's save and then rebuild HLODs one more time. After it's built, let's hide our HLODs from our viewport and hit play. That looks pretty good. Let's cover one last thing. Let's place an actor in our level and make them part of our HLODs and World Partition. At the top of the viewport, press the plus button, go to Shapes, and then drag in a cube. Then let's scale it up. On the cube detail panel, we can scroll down to HLOD section. Include actor in HLOD is already checked. Let's then assign its HLOD layer to our HLOD instanced layer. The UE5 documentation notes that instance is better for individual static meshes, such as trees or rocks or cubes. When our cube is shown as part of the HLOD, it is called an imposter. When we get close enough to the imposter, it is swapped out with a real actor. Let's now set up the cube in the world partition. Go to the World Partition section and let's set the runtime grid to our world settings grid named Main Partition and make sure spatially loaded is true. If we check it out before rebuilding our HLODs, you will see the cube disappear when its grid is unloaded. Let's then rebuild our HLODs. Now we will see the imposter is displayed when we are far away. Alright, I think that's enough for this video. In the next video, let's add grass, dirt, and stone material to our landscape. If you enjoyed this video, consider subscribing and sticking around. I really appreciate it. Thanks. Bye.